So we're very happy to have three folks who volunteered to be reflecting on these issues with us on this webinar. We have Chris Van Hoven, John Williams, and Stacy Murphy. And we have sent them some questions to think about. And so I'll just list some of the questions that you can reply to if you're interested or have something to say. I'll start with Chris, if that's okay.
Sure.
We asked, before purchasing forest land, did you see your trees as a way to generate income? Have you generated income? And what does that look like? Have you ever used a financial incentive program? And what advice would you give to someone who's pursuing an assistance program? So Chris, do you want to take it away and just introduce yourself a little bit and where your property is?
Sounds good. My name is Chris Van Hoven. We own 430 acres here in Tuolumne County, just outside of Twain Harte. This has been a family property in the family since the 1920s, and we own the property. My spouse and her two siblings own it as a cooperative tenants in common property. So, and we live on the property. My wife and I live on the property, and I'm basically the forest manager. Is basically what's going on here. So we moved here in 2019 permanently, and yes, we have a couple different things have gone on. We have benefited from financial assistance through EQIP. When we first got here, we went through the whole process of getting an EQIP grant, part of that program to take down beetle kill. And we were the property was hit fairly hard with beetle kill, and there was enough that we had certain areas in the property that needed to be treated and take down standing dead and to minimize further damage. So as we got into it a little farther, we decided that since with EQIP we already had loggers hired through them, and we had them on the property, so we decided to do a live harvest at the same time. We are under the property has an NTMP associated with it, and we've been part of the, as Jacob talked about, the Williamson Act. We have been a timber preserve zone since the early 80s, actually. So we had the paperwork in place to be able to do to harvest. So we decided to do a live harvest at the same time. It had been about 10 years for any harvesting done. My father-in-law, who was the basically owner-operator before I got here, was very diligent about maintaining forest health and doing periodic harvesting to maintain health and to preserve value. So we decided to go ahead and do a live harvest at that 2018, 2019, and we actually made money. Woohoo! Hey, it's great. Everything was cool. We already had them here, and we were able to clear a profit off of it, which we rolled back into further, pay taxes and pay insurance. Actually, that became a real issue as we got farther into it here. So so we benefited from that when we first got here. And over the past 2 years, we benefited from a program called My Sierra Woods, which was a limited program through the state of California. And we banded together with 11 different property owners around us, and were able to do a pretty good-sized mastication project. We did 400 acres here on our property, and the surrounding properties, it ended up being about another 120 acres or so were mechanical mastication, and then we also had a hand crew come in and do some work around our meadow. We have a 40-acre meadow in the center of the property. So yes, we have definitely benefited from financial assistance, and we have also been doing a whole bunch of stuff with good timber harvest to improve the forestry, to improve the forest health, and also basically to fire minimization as well. So we're trying to be good stewards of the property that has been passed down to us, and then pass it on in better shape than we found it to the next generation. So we're very that's kind of where we're at right now. So we just finished the mastication project last fall, and everything's been signed off by Cal Fire, and we're all ready to go. So now we're planning the next harvest. We're thinking 2029, that neighborhood, 28, 29, and also next steps in terms of maintaining, what the mastication has done for us, maintaining that, that forest, and what's kind of next steps around that. And we do work with a RFP, a registered forester. Actually, the original forester that I started working with did the NTNP back in 1999, actually, in 98, 99. And so we had a good history with the property and knew what our goals were. And now he's since passed away, but we've transitioned to another forester, and we're looking forward to the future.
Thanks, Chris. And it looks great. We did a field day with you out there this summer.
Yes, you did. It was big fun.
It was awesome.
It looks great. I'm really pleased. Really pleased.
Okay, John, can I go ahead and call on you and introduce yourself and just a little bit about your property and where you're at?
Yes, I'm John Williams. I've been a professional forester in California for, 60 years. I've worked as a consulting forester with a large company that is now out of business, Hammond, Jensen & Wallen, and as a part for 25 years, I managed a 30,000 acre redwood timber property for the clients in the little town of Wallala up on the north coast, right on the boundary line between Sonoma and Mendocino counties. And then when Hammond, Jensen & Wallen went out of business, one of my colleagues and I bought the forestry division, and in 1990, about 2000, and had been running that as our own company, Environmental Resource Solutions, for until I retired about 8 years ago. And the company is still in Sebastopol now, and actively working on many of these kinds of products. My wife and I purchased originally in 2012 15 acres of redwood forest land in Occidental, and when I saw it, I mean, it immediately it's I know I'm a forester. I look at trees, and it was uncut forest land since it had been clear cut, I guess, around 1890, and then heavily logged in 1968, and hadn't been touched since then. And then when during COVID, we didn't have anything else to do, so we bought an additional adjacent 12 acres. So we now have 28 acres of forest land. And on that, we have done a timber harvest. We cut 223,000 board feet, which is approximately a third of the standing basal area. And which generated a revenue of $265,000 with $140,000 of sale expense. So we had about $125,000 profit on the first entry. And it's on a non-industrial timber management plan, and the schedule is to come back in 20 years and basically do the same thing. We have done a number, actually, of programs with mostly with EQIP, and one with the North Bay Forest Improvement Program. And they do more than just the mastication and things we're talking about. Our first, one of them in 2021, we had this property has been there for a long time. In fact, I think Meeker's original steam-powered sawmill was supposed to have been located on one corner of this property. But through EQIP in 2021, we replaced a 5 6-foot diameter culvert with a 6-foot pipe. We installed 4 ditch relief culverts. We stabilized an existing gully erosion by restoring the watercourse back to its original channel, and then adding a drop inlet and 125 feet of the stream under the existing landing. And on that, our total cost was $76,000. Equip paid $55,300, which came to 73% of the project cost. And it's really clear. You need to be clear that these are never intended to cover all your costs. You have to have some skin in the game, and you have to invest.
That's
one thing I would very strongly advise, which we did, is especially if you're working in water like this with a culvert, we did all of the permitting through our non-industrial timber management plan. We did the stream, the 1,600 stream survey crossings. Equip did the engineering, which probably was a $10,000 or $15,000 cost. But by doing it, through the NTMP, it means that the county has no involvement, and so we did not have to go through their grading ordinance or any of their ordinances, which would have added tens of thousands of dollars to the project cost. So that's important. And in 2024, last year, we did a mastication with equip of 11.3 acres. But at the same time, these are never simple. And we had an access road that had, after logging, had hit a spring and was just absolutely undrivable. So with equip, we modified our contract to put in 200 feet of French drain and then rock it so that we could get access to the treatment areas. And that project had a total cost of $56,600, and equip paid $30,000 in rough dollars, and which is about 53%. And this year we just finished a mastication of on this one, there was a mastication of 11 acres on that. We just masticated about 14 acres this year through at North Bay FIP, and did an additional 4 acres of pile and pile 4 burning, 4x4 piles. But that project, that's not completed, so I don't really have the funds on it. One other thing I would advise anybody who's going to be working on their own land, it would be to get your own timber operator's license for your property. Even if you plan to cut a tree or drag a log, many of the activities under a NTMP or a timber harvest plan require a licensed timber operator, and many of those could have nothing to do with logging. For example, if you need to replace culverts on your property, any competent person with a backhoe can do it. But if he doesn't have a LTO license, he can't. But if you have one, he can do it under your license, and you can. For number one, loggers are busy. If what you want is small, they don't have time, or if they do, they're the only ones that can do it, so they'll charge you more than you would get otherwise. So anyway, that's my take on it.
That was great, John. Thank you. And thanks for giving us specific numbers. That's really helps picture the investment and kind of ebb and flow of funds. So thank you for that.
Yeah, we had a tour. We had a tour on the property last year with forest landowners, and sharing specific data. I would actually rather have people know the actual numbers than speculate about what it might have been.
I appreciate that. I'd like to go ahead and call on Stacy to share her thoughts on these topics. Go ahead, Stacy.
Hi, my name is Stacy. I am a co-owner of a 40-acre property in Philo in Mendocino County. And I'm just going to say from the jump that I am I don't feel particularly qualified for this conversation. I am so far behind in terms of experience in comparison to Chris and John. So if you're looking for someone who has a ton of wisdom and has been sort of through it, they're the right folks. If you are brand new, maybe I can be an inspiration as someone who had absolutely no idea what I was getting into when we bought this property. And we did not expect, we did not want 40 acres. But as some of you probably know, um, you know, there in many places where, rural forested areas, there are small quarter-acre parcels that are sort of in town. And then there are these large, 100-acre, 200-acre, 40 acres was like small in terms of the offerings. So by that, we looked for property for many years. And when we finally found something that 40 acres by that time seemed quite reasonable, but it's still, we're still sort of out of our league. I'll just fess up. So when we learned about the opportunity to take this for a stewardship class and sort of just, it seemed like this really wonderful opportunity to just get up to speed. And that's where we are. We bought the property just 3 years ago. So it still feels very brand new. And I will admit that we just had not put much thought at all into what it meant to own and manage forest. And I think, our property is sort of 15 acres or so of oak woodland and grass sort of meadow. And then there's about 25 acres of redwood and mixed conifer. So, um, as soon as we started to learn, like what, like it's never, I mean, it hasn't been thinned. There's been no management whatsoever for many, many years. And, we just took this class thinking that, oh, we'll just learn something. And by the time we finished this class, we were fully committed to being responsible stewards of this, this little property. So, which is for us is huge, but I know compared to other forest landowners, it's just like a little bit. But so where we are in our journey is that we've engaged a forester and we are in the process of developing a plan. And our intentions are really just to improve the health of the forest. It's just really, really crowded. There's tons and tons of over-competing trees. We are interested in just maintaining habitat and, for animals, just maintaining the forest. And we don't have any intention of, we didn't go into it with the idea of generating revenue, but if that happens, great. It's not, like I said, our relationship to the property from the beginning was sort of just, for enjoyment. But we've of course learned that there are ways to meet both of those needs, to be a responsible steward, and take good care of the forest and, offset your costs. So, we are very early. We applied for the North Bay FIP and were awarded this year. And so that will support the development of a plan with our forester. And then we haven't even mapped out the activities yet, but there's a lot of thinning that has to happen. There's some culvert that has to be addressed. There's all kinds of things, but we see it as this long-term relationship, and we intend to apply for future grants as that opportunity comes up. I mean, one thing I would just add, Kim mentioned the grant opportunities. I mean, the North Bay FIP grant application could not have been simpler unless they literally walked up to you and gave you money. I mean, you had to check a few boxes and write a little bit, but if we can get that grant, you can get that grant. I mean, we met all the requirements, but I really encourage people to look into those opportunities because, I work in a field where we do complex federal grants all the time. And I was like, I've never seen a grant proposal this user-friendly. So if you haven't looked into it, please do. That's it. I don't know. Sorry. You all had so much detail. We just haven't done that much yet. We're just getting started, but I don't know if that's helpful. Great.
That was great, Stacy. I think there's a broad range of experience across forest landowners and a broad range of different forest types and potential for actually generating revenue. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And I think you're not alone. There's plenty of folks that I've worked with who really didn't give it much thought before they purchased the property. So thank you for explaining all of that. I do still want to bring in our landowner panel briefly. Stacy had to leave, so let's start with John. If you could keep your comments about insurance to a couple minutes, but we did ask you to share what your insurance story has been. So John, go ahead.
You want me? Okay. Well, we had our 2 points. We had our insurance non-renewed and had to go through the process of finding another insurer about to 5 years ago, or maybe more. I lose track, but at the time, we went through and we had a broker, and the best that they could come up with was like $17,000 a year for insurance. Fortunately, we were able finally to get insurance at a reasonable rate from AAA. So that's the good thing. Jana had very briefly talked about the different programs. Recently, we received a letter from our insurance carrier inviting us to participate in their wildfire prepared home program, which is I think Jana could probably explain it better than I can, but it's very similar to what the Board of Forestry is adopting on the fire safe, especially in the 0 to 5 feet. But it has about 16 different points. I had a video review of our property yesterday, and we passed maybe about half of the points, and they're very, very specific. And the way their program works is you either pass it every point, whether you have bare mineral soil, vegetation, all these vents, everything is pass or fail. It's yes or no. And if it's no on any one of the 16 points, then you fail designation. So I don't know where that's going to be, but I could easily see our insurance company going from an invitation to participate in this to a requirement for continued insurance. So it's a concern.
Who's your insurance company?
It's AAA.
Mm-hmm. That's why I said my talk will be dated in 3 months. The world is changing very quickly. If you have insurance, hold on to it. Don't shop. If you think you're going to lose insurance, then I just bought a new home in July, and I talked to 15 insurance companies till I finally found one that I felt like I could afford. I live in a very wet, cold place in Arcata, but I'm close to Forestland, and so I was considered a super high risk, even though it's not an accurate high risk. But the models predict it because they can see that relationship to Forestland. I went in the end for a choice of a non-admitted carrier, so less subject to the bankruptcy protections and the other associated elements, but I got to an affordable place, and it's a calculated risk I'm willing to take at this point than being on the FAIR plan. What I'd encourage people to do is do the mitigations now, because it'd be cheaper to do the mitigations than it is to lose your insurance and then pay for something that isn't any different than what you have. So we're in a really rapid period of adjustment, and we're just going to have to accept that the world is changing around us, and early adopters, I think, will be better positioned. I really think about this in this way of like having a brag book of your work that you've done. Like, here's what my house looked like before, here's the things that I've done, and use that to help market your skill and your understanding. And hopefully your broker will go to bat for you as you move forward. You can also get independent assessments by your fire chief in your community. Collectively, they might help. They're not going to hurt, but I think really I think of it in kind of the life insurance way, where, it's hard to get life insurance once you have ailments. It's easier to get life insurance when you're healthy, and you need that verification of your physician to basically say, yes, this person is healthy, they're worth insuring now. We kind of need this outside independence to be able to say, like, I'm an insurance client worth investing in, and I'm a partner with you. Yes, there are things that go wrong from time to time, but I've managed my risk and I understand my responsibilities, and I really, want to work together so that we can have some long-term viability and protection of our properties going forward.
Yeah, I would add that most of the things that they find fault with are reasonable. I mean, reasonable things like screening, and we have an older house that's that we're working with what we've got.
Yeah.
Then and it's the screening under the openings and all of that sort of stuff. Some of them are going to require moderate amount of expense, but it's cheaper than like we've already done the calculation that doing the work is cheaper than losing insurance. There are some things just by the nature may never be able to be 100% compliant. That's just something we'll have to try to work out.
That's great. Thank you, John. I'm good luck. I'm hoping that works out for you. Chris, are you still there? Chris, do you have anything you want to share about insurance?
Yeah, when we moved out here in 2019, we were figuring on a certain price for insurance. Historically, what it had been over the years, we had a pretty good idea based on history. When we got here, the insurance rates tripled every year for 4 years straight, and actually more than tripled. And we got to a point where we could not afford private insurance. We were quoted over just about $40,000 for just fire insurance through a private insurer. So that forced us into Fair Plan and a DIC policy to, just as Jana was talking about a moment ago. So it's, if you're going into purchasing especially a home on a property that's surrounded by forest, you need to put that in your equation. We moved out here, and it's like a house payment for us in terms of how much insurance between the Fair Plan and the rest of the homeowners has cost. So, and even finding it was difficult. We don't have the DIC plan through insurer here in California. I'm encouraged by Jana's presentation that there's some work going on here in the state of California to actually get private insurance available to us. We are right in the middle of a forest wildfire zone here, and I can't disagree with that. We're surrounded. We have the national forest on two sides. The Stanislaus National Forest borders us on two sides, and here we are. So the house has been here since 1959, and as John's structure as well. It's an old house, and to put new windows in it and to do all the mitigation, it's going to be expensive. And what we're just talking about in terms of get in front of it and do the mitigation now while it's cheaper and than losing the insurance. So I'm encouraged, by Jana's presentation in terms of that there may be some relief coming for us, and what we're looking for as well. Something else that interests me in her presentation was that, we've just done all this mastication, fire risk mitigation. Is that going to translate into some kind of insurance reduction for us? Good question. I've got all sorts of notes here in terms of I'm going to start taking a look, see what we might be able to do, and if there's something that through Fair Plan we may be able to do some mitigation around the structures as well. So indeed we have a home, 3 cabins, a barn, and all sorts of structures on this property, and that's all taken in consideration in terms of what the insurance rates are. So we are insured, but am I happy about how much it costs, and do we have many options? No, not at all. That's it in a nutshell.
If I could tack on one idea, Chris, I think you reminded me that it's really worth saying. I spent a lot of time in the post-fire investigation space looking at how mitigations perform and whether or not they make a difference in survivorship. And let me just say a resounding absolutely. Like there is so much that you can do to manage the risk to those structures. And don't be intimidated by it. Start with what's doable. It's pretty easy to upgrade the vents and get to that finer mesh screen. It's pretty easy to do the clearance around the houses. That the roof really matters, and that's a harder investment to get to. But when you start ticking those things off, there's a ton that you can do. And if you come into it with the mindset that like someone may be here and someone may be not, and if they're not here, what can I do to set this property up for success and this house up for success? It really changes. Like I have a cabin where I grew up and I don't have insurance. And I put my effort in on what I can do to manage for it. And I've made that calculated decision. It's a small cabin. I'm not that worried about it. If I lose it, it'll be sad, but I'll pick up and
Yeah.
carry on. But I know what I can do, and I see it perform well in actual settings. So I know a lot of people are trying to cast doubt on those pieces, but every little bit is going to change your margin and increase you and tip you in the right direction.
Yeah, and we've already, defensible space. We're working on that. The vents is something I'm right on top of right now, and clearance around that. So that, yeah, I appreciate that. One thing you talked about is a fire chief coming in and taking a look around and kicking the tires here, and I think that really want to get involved with. I think that would be really helpful for us. And a couple of years ago, Fair Plan sent out, here's a list of things that that you need to mitigate, and you may be able to get a rate reduction off of it. And I think I'm going to take that a little more seriously in terms of, hey, maybe we should be doing this stuff. The windows is a big deal here. They're single pane and for heating and all that sort of good stuff, but survivability of the home as well. So that's it's good advice. Thank you. I appreciate your presentation. It's very cool.
Thank you. Thank you all. I think we got a great overview of a lot of the financial opportunities, risks, and issues going on forest land here in California. So I want to thank everybody who spoke and who was part of our panel. This is our last in the three-part series of Before You Buy Forest Land. What we're going to do is put our recording online. We also have a number of resources to share with you. We have a series of newsletters that went out to people with additional links that we will send in an email to everyone who registered for this webinar. And one of the products we developed is called Before You Buy Forest Land Checklist. And so that includes content from all three of our webinars of things that people should think through before buying forest land, and a kind of a checklist system so that there's the ability to, kind of check off what you've thought about and what you've investigated as you're shopping. So look for that to come. And I think with that, I will just close the webinar and say once again, thanks to everybody.